Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Personal Trainers Who Care. Today, I am joined by Ryan Taylor. So, I actually met Ryan because I took a course with him. He is an educator for the exercise mechanic. He's a bodybuilder. He's a longtime personal trainer, lover of all things movies, and also founder of Dynamis Athletic. I'm going to hand it off to him and let you guys hear what he has to say about his journey as a personal trainer and how he founded Dynamis and his journey before he started.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I guess if we want to talk about what my journey was, so I got into fitness when I was, I think, 14 or 15. Originally, just kind of training for sport because I played a bunch of sports in high school. Actually, the first training program I ever did was P90X with
God.
like a group of friends. So that was like my introduction to actually like training hard, and kind of fell in love with it right away. And then I originally went to school for engineering physics, so that was my major initially. And about halfway through my degree, I remember actually having this moment literally in the middle of a lecture where I was like, if I keep doing this, I'm either going to work at a lab or I'm going to work at a desk for the rest of my life. And I got up, I left my class, I went to student services, I changed all my courses, I switched to a human kinetics program the following semester. And that was kind of the beginning of me getting into the fitness space. So I started working as a trainer when I was 20 at Good Life. So I spent, I think, about 6.5 years there. And then I spent another 5 years working for Movati. And then I think it was in 2022, I had won I think it was Personal Trainer of Excellence is what they call it. And then in that time, as I was prepping for my first bodybuilding show, I also founded what's now Dynamis Athletic, which is my coaching company, which I started doing full time in September of 2023. So almost 2 years of doing that full
Oh, wow.
time.
Okay. Newer than I thought.
So yeah, so the coaching company as it exists now is relatively young. I had some online clients sort of before that point. So it wasn't like a completely drastic
Right.
transition. So it was sort of like I slowly eased into that. Once it got to the point where, it was sort of I was going to swear, but you asked me not to. Was it
It's okay.
poop or get off the pot? I guess might be the PG way of saying
Oh,
it.
my God.
But there was kind of a point where I was like, all right, I need to make this move kind of now or never.
Right.
So that was kind of the leap of faith in 2023. So
Scary, but fun. Um, so what was the transition to bodybuilding? Like, when did you do your first show? Like, where did that interest peak? Because obviously, general fitness is quite a different training style than bodybuilding and pure hypertrophy, which is just a fancy word for muscle building. Um, yeah, how did that happen?
yeah, so I actually originally competed as a power lifter for about 6 years.
Okay.
So I think I did my first powerlifting meet when I was 21. Honestly, I was super mediocre as a powerlifter. At least I benched 4 plates, so I guess I have that. But I honestly was never great at it. And then the COVID lockdowns happened. And initially, I just wanted to diet because I was sort of sick of being a fat powerlifter. And I had sort of gone through, a variety of injuries. I'd torn my pec, I'd had a back injury, I'd torn my hamstring. Like there's kind of a number of them that were just holding me back from training being enjoyable. So I dieted down actually the first lockdown during COVID, found it super fun.
Really?
Yeah, big time. It's like I really, really enjoyed the process. I really like things that honestly require like a certain level of like meticulousness. I
Yeah,
like
okay.
data collection
It's the engineering mind
big
in you.
time. So after that initial diet, which is funny looking back on because my like endpoint was not even as lean as like my off season now. So it's like kind of funny to look at,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
yeah, really enjoyed that process. And I decided then I was like, you know what? I want to find another competitive avenue. I've always been intrigued by bodybuilding.
Hmm.
So I spent about 3 years from that point until my first show. So I had practiced sort of like a long diet every year, built back up, got on stage for the first time in May of 2023. which I ended up winning the overall at that show. And then I did 2 shows last year. And then I've taken essentially all of 2025 off competing. And then I'll be back on stage next summer.
Wow. Okay. So, few questions. How does it feel to be stage lean?
Terrible.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's something. I'm actually going to steal this. It's a line that I heard from Justin Harris.
Okay.
He's the coach for Tripona Nutrition. The guy's awesome. I actually did an interview with him a couple years ago, and he used this phrase where he talked about you could split bodybuilding into 2 types. He called it like first bodybuilding and second bodybuilding. First bodybuilding is what like 90% of people experience, which is dieting is really miserable, being really lean sucks. You know, even in the off season, you have to still have some kind of food restriction so body fat doesn't get carried away, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what most people experience. And being exceptionally lean and dieting down like that is pretty rough. Like if you're, you know, even a 200-pound plus male on 1,600 calories for extended periods of time, you don't feel amazing. With that being said, as I've gotten along further and further in this, I've actually found the dieting process easier and easier. And what I'll say, like full disclosure, part of that is, you know, I'm pretty candid about this on social media. I've recently experimented using like GLP-1 medications, which are a total game changer. So through kind of a variety of factors, I would say, you know, it's less miserable now. But something I always talk about with clients is, you know, if you're doing your first show, I don't think that suffering should be the goal, but understand that if you get truly stage lean, like you're going to suffer to some extent because the human body is not designed to be, you know, 4 or 5% body fat as a male or, you know, 9, 10, 11% as a female. There's a reason why people, you know, women will start to lose their menses, people lose libido, et cetera. Like your body is in survival mode at that state.
Yeah, 100%. Before we sort of segue into the dieting stuff, I want you to speak a little bit more on, I guess, the world of bodybuilding and what you want people to know about what you do as a bodybuilding coach and a fat loss coach generally, because you don't just work with bodybuilding clients. And I think my intention with bringing you on, plainly, was to emphasize the point that bodybuilding isn't just for bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And I sort of wanted to demystify that a little bit. So I think, and a great place to start with that is to talk about what bodybuilding is, and what you do specifically as a bodybuilding coach.
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts. I guess where I'd start is I would differentiate between what I would call like competitive bodybuilding and lifestyle bodybuilding. You know, the Venn diagram of that overlaps about 90%. Competitive bodybuilding is an extreme sport. And there's a line that I've heard from Stan Efferding that says competition is inherently unhealthy. Anytime you do anything where you are competing at a high level, there are certain sacrifices and risks that people take to do so. So at that point, of course, there are elements of that are not the healthiest. But I'll bookmark that in a second. When I look at like bodybuilding from like a lifestyle perspective, I think that there are a lot of principles that people could take from bodybuilding and apply to essentially just have like a healthier, more, I don't want to say more meaningful, but you can essentially apply a lot of these concepts, and, you know, lose body fat, build some muscle, which we know is going to lead to greater health outcomes, make better dietary choices, prioritize sleep, so on and so forth. So
Yeah, 100%.
all of the things, excuse me, all of the things that you would want a competitive bodybuilder to do to achieve their best look, in general, those are all things that we need to do also to prioritize health.
Yeah.
So that's where I say, you know, the overlap is quite, you know, significant. Now, what I'll also say is even when looking at competitive bodybuilders, while there are certain risks and stuff, I always call it kind of like a risk assessment conversation. While that is a part of it, even if we only cared about people's competitive outcomes, there's a prerequisite level of health required to do that. So while, for example, like somebody like myself, I might take bigger chances than somebody else from a health perspective, especially as like an open class bodybuilder.
Right.
If I'm in poor health, not only is that bad for living a long time, it's also bad to yield good results as a bodybuilder. So you have to actually have a certain foundation of health in order to continue to push the envelope as a competitor. So that's where I think sometimes people there's a little bit of a stigma around the bodybuilding side of things in terms of, over restrictive dieting, like food that's not fun whatsoever, not socializing. That's a big part, even with my competitors that I talk about. There's a time and a place where like you got to put your big boy or big girl hat on and like do what you got to do. But in order to have sustained success, like nobody becomes a great bodybuilder in 1 year. They do it in 10.
Right.
So it's like, how can we maintain somebody's health? And that includes their physical health and mental health. How can we do so in a way that allows for them to make progress year after year after year for a decade?
Exactly.
So yes, overly restrictive diets are going to help somebody lose body fat and get very lean. But like, what's the cost of that? Depending on who the individual is, like what's the relationship with food? How much psychological damage does that do to somebody? I have a client that I work with right now where that's part of the conversation is, in kind of her next dieting phase, how do we have conversations around not just this like all or nothing approach, which has in the past just led to kind of a pretty unhealthy relationship with food. So it's how can we integrate a little bit more normalcy into her diet while also recognizing there's going to be periods of time where food gets pushed up, food gets pushed down, et cetera. So I think that's a big thing, is just understanding that like, yes, there are behaviors that can be risky or they can be restrictive, et cetera. It doesn't have to be something that I would actually say, I don't think that bodybuilding should be something that takes away from someone's quality of life.
In terms of weight loss and fat loss in general, you mentioned that your clients and when you're doing bodybuilding have to be sort of at a baseline level of health. I'm assuming that's more because of the tail end of prep and how deep you have to get into a cut and the risk that poses. What would you say to people in general who say, there's a lot of talk online about high cortisol, being in a very stressed out state. And we know that fat loss, weight loss is a stressful experience for the body. How would you support someone who is looking to lose fat, but their health is not in a great place? Like, how do you find the balance between someone who would benefit, their health would benefit from losing weight, but at the same time, they're dealing with a bunch of chronic issues that might be exacerbated by a fat loss phase? Like, how do you balance that?
So actually, before I answer that, I think another thing that's important to note is the foundation of health isn't just something that's going to lead to better fat loss. It's also something that leads to more efficient muscle growth. So for example, like if somebody was in a like high inflammatory state, which is not uncommon if people have poor diets, high body fat, etc. When you have an excessive amount of just systemic inflammation, there's actually a blunting effect for like muscular adaptations. So you actually see this as well. There are studies that look at like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And when you give them to otherwise healthy people, you actually get a blunting effect of hypertrophy because it decreases the amount of acute inflammation too much.
Right.
If you give it to people who are elderly or in diseased states, because it drops their inflammation out of this extreme range back down kind of into this like normal tolerable range, you actually see an increase in hypertrophy. So there's sort of a Goldilocks zone there. So there has to be a sufficient stress to facilitate some change. But if this person is in this just state of being that is going to hinder their ability to like build muscle, you need to address the health thing first. To answer your question about fat loss, I think the problem with some of these conversations is they're multifactorial.
100%.
So I would say in general, one of the biggest things that people can do, assuming that they are overweight, one of the biggest things people can do to actually improve health outcomes is lose weight.
Yeah.
So now, if you have somebody who has been struggling with food their whole life, that conversation sometimes is like a non-starter. So then you have to learn, and this is a big thing in my opinion about coaching. There's an X's and O's part of coaching for sure. The coaching, to me, like good coaches understand how to talk to human beings.
The individual.
Right? So even if I know the best thing for this person from a macro perspective to get healthier is to lose, I don't know, 20, 30 pounds, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
Depending on what their relationship with food is, how busy their work is, whatever it happens to be, that conversation is going to change depending on whatever is going to lead to behaviors that lead to that outcome. So it could be a conversation about, hey, like you drink, full sugar pop every day. Let's switch to like a diet pop or a Coke Zero or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
So really easy way to integrate literally the same behavior into their lifestyle. But that reduction in calories obviously is going to yield some kind of net fat loss.
Yeah.
Conversations about, it's like, hey, you order food all the time. Well, depending on how busy they are, like I have clients that are like this. I have a client that works a full-time job and has like a full-time side hustle. He's awake at like 5 a.m. He goes to bed at like 11 at night. So for him, we will literally go through the like fast food restaurants in his area and we pick out on the menu what are his best options. Mm-hmm. So there's a saying that I really like is there's a difference between what's optimal and then what's practical. So my goal isn't to find the optimal thing because human beings are complex.
Yeah.
We have lives, we have relationships, we have jobs, we have all of that stuff. But the goal is to find something practical that just moves the needle in the right direction.
Yeah, just fits into your schedule. That's actually a great segue into my next question because I feel like a huge barrier for so many people when they're trying to start a fat loss journey or just change their body, build muscle, do anything to move their health in the right direction. And so they're like, where do I even start? What am I going to change? Am I going to start having to weigh out all my food and track all my calories? I don't want to do that. Some of these people have like 3, 4 kids working a full-time job that's super high stress. They're trying to fit everything in. Let's say that they're a parent who makes meals for their family every week. How would you approach or what would you suggest for people to start making those changes, but they can't get down to the nitty-gritty of tracking all the calories? Obviously, we know tracking calories is going to yield the best results because you're going to know exactly what's going in your body. You're going to be able to retain muscle with high protein, but not everyone has that reality, or at least not yet. That's not necessarily a starting point for everyone. So where would you start someone off who's in that dilemma?
Yeah. So again, like we said before, kind of this idea of how do we start having practical conversations? Mm. So as someone who's a coach, what my job is I need to take a step back and say, okay, if I ignore the psychological element or social element, whatever it happens to be, if this person was just an input-output machine, what are the inputs that yield the output that we want? If they want to lose weight, we need to have some kind of caloric deficit. We probably want some kind of baseline of exercise, some baseline of resistance training, X number of hours of sleep, high quality sleep every night, so on and so forth. Like we've got kind of a template of things that we know that yield the results that we want. Mm-hmm. And then we go, okay, based on this individual, what are the lowest hanging fruit? What are the ways that I can remove obstacles to starting to do some of those behaviors as best as possible? And the goal shouldn't be to do all of them all at once. So something that I really like when I start thinking about what diets lead to success. I have my biases on certain diet strategies that I think make a little bit more sense than others, but ultimately what matters the most is adherence. So this is why, again, I like the diet pop example, or the fast food example. Is
Yeah.
getting fast food every day the best thing? No. Is it better than getting 3 Big Macs every day? Probably, right? Like that, a healthy fast food,
Right.
quote unquote.
Yeah.
So same thing. So for this individual, depending on what their work schedule is, maybe we don't change their diet at all. But maybe it's like, hey, you've got an hour during your lunchtime, go for a walk.
Walk.
It might seem so small. And for those individuals as well, I use this analogy a lot in the courses that we teach, but I always think of things as like hitting a bullseye. The further somebody is away from being what I call like an advanced trainee, because there's something that starts to happen, the further you get to your genetic potential from like a fitness standpoint, you do get kind of this adaptive resistance. So your body will actually start to push back a little bit.
As you get closer to your genetic ceiling,
Correct.
you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're very far from that, the like bullseye that you have to hit to yield some kind of positive result is gigantic.
Huge.
So I literally,
True.
like I always say,
Okay.
like if I close my eyes and I just threw a tennis ball at the wall, I'm going to hit the bullseye.
Yes.
So maybe it's going for a lunchtime walk. Maybe it's switching to diet pop. Maybe it's, I'm trying to think of an example. Maybe it's like when you cook spaghetti and meatballs for your family, you do the like rice noodles, whatever. It could be any like assortment of options.
Yeah.
But the goal is to just do a positive change. And then the ball starts to roll. And then you can start to stack these behaviors like one after another over a long period of time. So, there's what's the saying? Like you have to learn how to crawl before you walk before you run, etc.
Yeah.
So maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road, this person's a rock star that like goes to the gym 5 days a week. She measures out all of her food, so on and so forth. Like that might be the outcome, but it has to start with just one small change at the beginning.
Yeah, so true. And I think that's also sort of the distinction between clients or people who want a result as soon as possible or to be as permanent as possible,
100%.
right? Like people who are looking for a lifestyle change and people who are looking for changing things in general, you're not going to change everything overnight. But if you have the time, resources, and motivation to change everything overnight, you absolutely can. And in that case is where you're going to be like 10,000 steps a day, tracking every calorie that you have in, gym 3, 4, 5 times a week, which obviously will increase like stress and will be harder to manage and requires a lot of resources, but definitely possible. So it just depends on like where your starting point is. Where, in the case that someone wants to start tracking calories and figure out like where their basal metabolic rate is and how they're going to start doing that, how do you do that? Because it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
What do you suggest people do in the beginning, the first few weeks?
Yeah. So assuming, excuse me, assuming that this is somebody who, let's say, doesn't have any sort of mental barriers to tracking calories, because that can be a whole other conversation as well. But assuming that this person is like A-okay, getting MyFitnessPal or whatever app they want to use, generally speaking, like if this is somebody who is not already, say, like a competitor, your moms and dads, that kind of thing. Usually I like people to actually make no dietary changes initially. Just track your food as best you can. If you don't have a scale, that's fine. Like portion it out as much as possible. Especially in today's day and age with like ChatGPT, you can literally take pictures of it and it will guesstimate it for you.
Yeah.
So, or if you are comfortable weighing your food out, that's obviously going to increase the level of accuracy. But initially, I won't really make too many changes because all we're trying to do is establish a baseline. Most people are going to intuitively eat in and around maintenance. So we will essentially just have someone track for a couple of weeks, pay attention to what's going on the scale or with visuals or whatever kind of metric we want to use to track progress. I'm a big fan of the scale personally.
Yeah.
I also think that, destigmatizing the scale is a really important thing as well.
So true. So true. I'll put a pin in that because I have something to say about that after.
But yeah, so essentially I'll just start with, let's just track it. Let's see what happens. Now we at least have like a rough starting point. And then, if they're eating around maintenance, we know we want to pull potentially some calories from somewhere. Generally, what I would do with somebody is I want to prioritize having a sufficient amount of protein in their diet. If we're talking Gen Pop, you're probably fine with like 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. If you're a more muscular or a more active individual, I'd probably like that number being higher. Like some of my competitive bodybuilders, I want it to be closer to like 1.2, 1.3. Then per pound of body weight. Yeah,
pound.
sorry. Then we'll usually look at dietary fat intake, because you do require a minimum amount of fat in your diet, for the absorption of certain like vitamins and minerals, for the production of like sex hormones, brain health, etc. So those are kind of the two that we need in terms of just prerequisites for maintaining health. And then carbohydrate intake is generally just based on activity. So that's usually the thing that I would manipulate the most often. The other two macronutrients, we can move up and down. There tends to be a little bit less deviation there, because we don't want to pull them down ever too low, because now either we're, not having a sufficient amount of protein for like muscle retention, or we're not having enough fat for the aforementioned sort of health reasons. And then that's essentially where I would start. So I would have, like I said, kind of a rough starting point with their protein, rough starting point for their fats, fill in kind of the rest with carbohydrates. And then we would probably manipulate that up or down depending on what their goals were, just as a means of changing whatever their caloric intake would be.
So you're going to get them to track for the first
week to 2.
1 or 2 weeks. Okay. And then from there, what's the first drop in calories that you would go for?
I wouldn't say that I have a hard and fast rule.
No?
So depending on the individual, if they are somebody who, like if they're, I'm getting over a cold. I'm trying so hard not to cough into this mic.
Thing. Oh, I can imagine the itching is probably
brutal,
going
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So if they are like a low food individual, like a small person,
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to make a lot of, I'm not going to pull a lot of food from their existing diet. What we're probably going to start to do is actually try to integrate more like voluminous foods. And if there is some kind of caloric deficit that comes from that, amazing. But if there's somebody who's not eating a ton of food and all the food is incredibly calorie dense, so the food volume is really low, that person is going to be starving and is probably nutrient deficient in some way.
If they're eating a low volume of calorie dense foods.
Correct.
Already.
Yeah. Like let's say they're predominantly getting their carbohydrates from like sugar,
Yeah.
like candy, pop, whatever. If we can just shift those carbohydrate sources to things that are, fruits and vegetables, starches, whatever it happens to be, they're not only going to have like a greater nutrient profile. Obviously, if you've got fruits and vegetables in there, you're going to have some fiber, but you're also going to have an increase in food volume, even if there isn't any like change potentially in the caloric intake. So that would potentially be a move I would make first for that person.
So they feel fuller.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's probably some advantages even with very little modification from the actual caloric intake, because you're probably going to see improvement in health by just changing the food quality. You may actually still see like a resulting amount of like weight loss that might actually just come from like a drop in systemic inflammation, which is enough for people to have the confidence that they're seeing results, right? And that's kind of the thing that you want to see.
Yeah.
Now, if there's somebody who's eating a lot of food, we've got a little bit more play there. So I might just take their existing diet and then pull, let's say if they can tolerate like a greater deficit, I do actually tend to prefer bigger deficits initially.
Really?
The biggest reason being like tissue change is something that happens like very slowly. The mistake that can often happen is, people will try to have a really, really, really conservative diet. Let's say they pull 150, 200 calories out of their diet. So we know roughly that it's about 3,500-ish calories is about a pound, right?
Yep.
I think it's actually closer to like 3688 or something like that. But
Okay.
so if we're doing, I think I saw it in a paper like weeks ago and it's stuck in my brain.
Engineer behavior.
So let's say they have a 200 calorie deficit. So for a pound of fat loss, that's 17 days,
Yeah.
17 and a half days to lose 1 pound. So not only does that potentially feel like this person's making these lifestyle changes and they're like, damn, nothing's happening. Like I'm doing all this work and nothing's happening. That's a tough spot to be in. And because that like room for error is so small, you might have thought you were in a 200 calorie deficit and you never were. So now you've been mentally dieting for 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
yes.
and nothing has happened. So I tend to prefer erring on the side of like maybe something closer to like a 500 calorie deficit. In fact, what I usually will do is I like looking at rates of change. So as a general rule of thumb, plus or minus maybe 0.5%, but aiming for around like a 1% body weight, 1% loss of total body weight per week.
Yeah.
So if you have a 150-pound individual, like a pound and a half per week, in and around that is going to be my target. So if they were somebody who was comfortable dieting more aggressively, or they're a competitor doing a mini cut, I might make that a slightly more aggressive rate of loss. But I like using kind of that percent of total body weight as a metric just to make sure we're on track.
Yeah. Right. So it's like balancing. It also comes down to the individual,
Always.
obviously, right? So it's like, can they emotionally handle losing that much food? Because some people don't have an emotional experience with food and are completely fine just not eating. Like, I've had friends who can like eat nothing all day, and I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like, and they're fine. But then there's other people who are starving after like 2 hours, and it's like a very emotional experience for them, right? So,
Something I'll add to that, actually, this is where I think something I always think about as a coach is at the end of the day, if you understand what the end goal is that you want, and as I said before, like if I understand the input outputs, everything else is just a tool to get there. There's a million strategies that you could deploy. So if you have somebody who, I actually tend to be on this side of things. I don't do well with a ton of activity. Like I'm a bigger guy. If I walk a lot, do a lot of cardio, it actually beats me up, exhausts me.
yeah. Yeah.
And to offset that, like I already have very high food in like an off season. I would have to have that much higher food to offset like whatever the additional activity I'm doing is. So
Yeah.
I tend to err on the side of being what you'd call like low energy flux. So lower food, lower activity. For some individuals who either maybe they just like a lot of activity. I had an old client who I think literally she would do 17, 18,000 steps a day without trying.
Yeah.
Loved going on hikes, bike rides, all this stuff. Like that brought her enjoyment. She loved doing it. She also liked the fact that she could keep her food higher and offset it with higher activity.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like the net caloric deficit might end up being the same. But depending on the individual, what they respond best to, you just kind of choose what the appropriate path would be.
Yes, so true. And I think the approach of the weight loss is going to be so dependent on that emotional experience and whether someone can hold out and trust that good things are coming, especially in that beginning phase. What would you say to people who are like, oh, that's way too aggressive in the beginning? You're going to risk muscle loss. What would you say?
So the first part is I would explain, as we talked about before, just wanting to see like some momentum kind of initially.
Right.
that generally is enough for people like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. I tell people often muscle loss is the boogeyman that doesn't exist when you're dieting. We just don't really see it in any like meaningful way so long as people are eating a sufficient amount of protein, getting adequate sleep, and resistance training. If you are doing those three things, muscle loss, the risk is so low. You have to either be dieting without any protein and like not weight training, or maybe you're in like a highly stressful period of time in your life, in which case dieting probably isn't the right thing for you at that period of time anyway. But muscle loss just really isn't a huge concern when people are maintaining some of those other habits that they should be if they're like an active individual. Now, people perceive it as being muscle loss because what ends up happening is when you are dieting, you're going to lose glycogen that is essentially filling those muscle tissues. So glycogen is predominantly stored in two ways. So in the liver and then in muscle tissue. Your body's going to burn glycogen initially because that's like the readily available energy source that your body wants to use. Once that's effectively used up, then your body is going to shift into essentially using body fat to convert it into calories to burn that for energy. So a certain level of glycogen depletion is required to drop body fat. Now, what ends up happening is because glycogen, when it's stored, I think usually what you'll see is for every like 1 gram of glycogen that's stored, you'll see like 3 to 4 grams of water. So they're sponges, right?
Yeah.
So if you're, let's say you could store 500 grams of carbohydrate, like of glycogen. Well, that's going to be 2,000 grams or 2 kilos of water. So there's 4.4 pounds just in water.
Yeah.
So an analogy that I like to use is like if you compare a big steak to a beef jerky, there's the same amount of contractile tissue in both. Assuming it's the same piece, right? So
Yeah.
the steak and the beef jerky have the same amount of muscle, but the beef jerky is dried out and the steak is completely hydrated. So it obviously visibly looks much larger because it's hydrated. The beef jerky didn't lose any muscle. It just lost that glycogen and that fluid that is filling it back up, that intracellular space, right? So that's where visually it might look like somebody has lost muscle, but they haven't. They've just lost glycogen and water that's actually being stored in that muscle tissue.
Which is also why, like, if you had some sort of like bug and you were throwing up for a few days, everyone's like, oh my God, I'm so skinny. I lost so much weight. You lost a ton of water weight. And also you weren't eating because you weren't keeping anything down. So I guess there's this side of it where like if you had a really aggressive weight loss in the beginning, you're losing a lot of water, glycogen, and some fat. Compared to if it was a more modest deficit in the beginning. It's hard for people to see the results in the beginning, and they're like, and then they sort of give up really early because they're like, I tried a calorie deficit, it didn't work. It's like, how long were you doing it for? Is it true that in the beginning, the fat that you're losing is mostly visceral fat, which is why you don't really see as much in the beginning? Or does it depend on the metabolic profile of the person?
So the short answer is, honestly, I'm not 100% sure from a case-by-case basis. The difficulty when we're looking at whether it's visceral fat or not is there isn't a concrete, we can't concretely say you lose one and then you lose the other. Because visceral fat is so driven by essentially like, we've used the word inflammation a handful of times here, but driven by inflammation, driven by essentially like disease state promoting sort of like inputs to the body. Like you can get stage lean bodybuilders who have tons of visceral fat because while they will have a huge loss of subcutaneous fat, because in their cases, if you've got, this is obviously an extreme outlier, but if you have a 260, 270 pound open male bodybuilder, they might be 4 or 5% body fat, but their food is so high. So there's actually quite a bit of stress on the digestive tract.
Digestive system, yeah.
At that size, they're almost certainly using performance enhancing drugs, which one of the results of that is actually increasing visceral body fat. So you can end up with this situation where these individuals are exceptionally lean, but actually have a lot of visceral body fat. So to say which one you're going to lose before the other, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it depends.
This is where what I would say is, generally speaking, again, if you address health predominantly, you will likely see a drop in visceral body fat alongside subcutaneous fat as well. So obviously the open pro bodybuilder is a unique case. Most people are not that person, but generally speaking, if you were a 300-pound individual, now you're 200 pounds, you most likely also lost some visceral fat because your overall state of well-being has improved as well.
Right. Yeah. So what would you, if someone came to you and they wanted to enter a fat loss phase, but you judged them not to be ready because of their state of inflammation and beyond sending them to a doctor, what would you suggest that they do? It obviously depends. Everyone's different. They have different lifestyle factors and things that are driving it. But what are the places that you would look for people to also sort of check off, like, okay, there's no problems here, there's no problems here?
Yeah, I mean, I know you said no doctors, but honestly, I'd get blood work.
Yeah.
I think blood work is one of the most useful tools that we have. Even if you're not somebody who is well versed in being able to interpret blood work, having a doctor do blood work, give their interpretation. Again, I've actually seen people run blood work through ChatGPT as well to get like an
True.
interpretation of it.
Oh my God.
But I think the more the more data, the better.
Yeah.
Something you could look at again is, what are the lifestyle factors that are potentially causing a tremendous amount of stress? Is it work stress? Is it relationship stress, et cetera? Like you may not be able to address those things in the short term. We could also look at things like most people probably eat too little fiber. Most people probably eat too few antioxidants in their diet. So you could make some changes there that, we're not really trying to pursue an overly restrictive calorie deficit, but we can make some modifications to their diet where it's like, hey, the end goal of this right now is we're just trying to improve health.
Yeah.
And the result of that is probably going to be then net fat loss at some point as well. But depending on, where they're at, it's if we assess their diet and this person is exclusively eating Cheetos and cheeseburgers,
Yeah.
there's probably some dietary changes we can make there that are just going to improve their health.
Yeah. 100%. And it is so controversial right now, I feel like. I think people have such an emotional experience with food. And I put a pin in something earlier, and it was about we were talking about tracking
Yeah.
food. And in my experience, tracking food was actually the most free I felt from, I don't know, the emotional pull of food. I was so much more, my attitude and philosophy about it was that it was fuel. And I think for so many people, obviously it's a great thing for food to be enjoyment, and especially when you're with other people and, holidays and everything, that's great. But I think people automatically assume that they're going to become obsessive when they start tracking out their food. But it actually is so empowering. You learn so much. The skills and what you see on the scale, you carry that with you after, to the point where you can get pretty confident that you know how much you're eating, even when you're not using this scale. Use a scale for 3 to 6 months, you're going to be pretty well versed with how many calories are in things, what makes you feel good, how much on your plate makes you feel full. So I think that there's so much of a, I don't know, I guess people sort of automatically write it off because they think they're going to become obsessive, when actually it's probably the inverse
Yeah.
that's making you obsessive, because you're like, oh, I don't know how much this is probably too much. And maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the inverse. Maybe it actually is too much, and you don't know because you're not measuring it out. And data is so freeing.
Yep.
It's so freeing, and it's not an emotional experience. And like, obviously it's a hassle having to, take it out and measure everything out. And obviously it makes it more difficult when you're prepping things compared to just throwing something in a pan in a pot and making a big meal. Actually, I'm curious to hear about like what your approach to that has been. I know that obviously you're a bodybuilder, so your life is more measured
Pretty
out,
sure I've
but
measured every meal that I've eaten for like 5 years. So
okay, so maybe not the person to ask, but if you were going to make, I guess, like a pot stew or something, would you measure everything out? If you wanted something to eat for every day of the week, if that's how people like to eat, what would you do?
yeah, I actually think so. For people that batch cook, something that
Yeah.
you can do. So when people think of tracking their calories, they tend to think of it on a like by meal or maybe like on a per day basis. What really matters is caloric consumption over a long period of time. So if you
Yeah.
made a big pot of stew or whatever it happened to be, you could measure out what all the ingredients were that went into it. And then if you ate that over the course of 4 or 5 days, well, you rather than measuring it out every single time, you know what the total amount is. So over the span of 4 or 5 days, you could be like, oh, I ate 4,000 calories in stew, whatever it happens to be. So like, I think that that's a really useful way if you're somebody that likes to batch cook. Again, would I
Yeah.
recommend that for a bodybuilder? Probably not.
Yeah.
For, again, somebody who just wanted to like eat healthy, but still feel like they had some freedom, I think that that's a great option.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to add when we were talking about, I guess, kind of demystifying calorie tracking or using the
Yeah.
scale, I find something that I've had success with. So early in my career, because I would have clients, oftentimes women, I think there's a little bit more dialogue around sort of body image and the scale can have a lot of control over people.
100%.
I would default to their preference. So they didn't want to weigh themselves because it stressed them out, and I would just kind of abide by that. The problem is that relationship with the scale never got better. So like you had mentioned data collection. I love that. So something that we'll talk about a lot, and this is where I think education towards your clients matters a ton. So reframing that conversation as like when you get on the scale in the morning or whenever you weigh yourself, that's not a pass or fail. You're not a bad person because I went up 1 pound. It's just data. And I like kind of explaining it in the way that, if you think of like counting your calories and what you weigh on the scale, the same way as like how you manage your finances. If you literally never looked at your like credit card statements, if you never looked at your bank and you were just guessing when you paid for things, like you're probably going to end up in a bad way.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, you're going to have a tremendous amount of stress because you're like it's like those people.
Is it going to go
Yeah, I was
through?
going to say those people at the bar, they're like, I don't know, maybe my debit card's going to work. Like,
Yes.
probably not
Yeah.
the best place to be. So
No.
if we can reframe it where all you're doing is just collecting data, you're auditing your food, you're just like making sure that you're in the know and you have control over what those behaviors are. The other thing I find as well is you see this a lot with actually people that treat phobias. One of the first things that people do when they treat phobias is exposure treatment.
Yeah.
So when you resist something or you hide away from something, it has power over you.
Yeah.
If you weigh yourself every single day, again, as long as it's not, I'm a failure if I weigh X. If it's just,
Yeah.
I'm just weighing myself, this is just part of my routine.
Yeah.
You do that over and over and over and over again. The power that scale has on you to control your emotions starts to diminish.
Yeah.
And then it's just the same thing as brushing your teeth. Like I would literally weigh myself twice a day, like morning and night every day. I've done it for years and I
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah.
Like I go, and I go to bed, or I go, and I go and I make my breakfast. Right. So
Yeah.
obviously, easier for some people than others, but certainly what I have noticed is the more that I've leaned into kind of pushing back on that discomfort with clients,
Yeah.
sometimes there's still situations where maybe we don't, but I do actually really encourage people to do that. And then over time, the scale just isn't a thing that causes them at least as much stress as it used to.
For sure. And I think like you are making it in my opinion, making it bigger when you avoid something.
100%.
Like, it's that tiny little monster in the back of your mind just growing and growing and growing. And it's, oh, no, I can't do that because what if it happens? What if it happens? You're 20, 30 pounds overweight. Who cares? Like, your family still loves you. Like, everything's going to be okay. And there's something that you can do about it. And I think that, like, demystifying that stuff and shrinking it down into steps makes it less scary,
100%.
right? Because, okay, let's say you stand on the scale and you're 20, 30 pounds overweight, 50 pounds overweight. Where do you start next? Maybe switch to a diet soda.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. Like, yeah, that's maybe one place to start. And I think it's like, as humans, we make everything so big immediately. And we have to change everything all at once. And overnight, we have to become the person that we want to be. And, you know, everyone goes through that. Literally everyone. There's not one person on the planet Earth who doesn't feel like that in some regard at some point in their lives. Everyone wants to be better and change and do better and accomplish their goals. But I think that, stepping back. And I think it's so funny because I feel like every single podcast has come back to that same idea. It's like, step back one thing at a time. But it's life, baby.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this even on the drive in, that like any of the things that I'm going to say today are probably not very unique. All of my ideas are borrowed from other people. You know what I mean? And as much as maybe I have a different approach than other people, maybe I don't. At the end of the day, from an incredibly macro perspective, we all kind of generally know the things that are health promoting activities. And like one of my favorite phrases comes up like every course we ever teach is like, don't miss the forest through the trees. So, you know, we talked about higher energy flux, lower energy flux, different strategies, whatever. None of them are any better or worse than the other. And I think this is something, you know, people certainly fall victim to it. I think that trainers and coaches fall victim to this more than anybody, where we like getting into the weeds and we can often fall victim to making things way more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, like if you, what do people say? If you touch grass and
Touch
do
grass.
breathing exercises, like, great. That's awesome. If you like want to smoke a joint and watch a movie, great. That's awesome. If you want to cuddle your cats in bed, great.
Yes.
Like all of those things are going to just like probably have the same net result that they're something that's de-stressing.
Yes.
Do you want to eat ground turkey or chicken? Doesn't matter. So this is something where I find like it matters, but it doesn't matter in a sense.
So true. And it's so hard to be like, it's such an annoying answer, but it's how it always is.
Yep.
It's how it always is. I like, what are the habits that you're doing over time, repeatedly, over and over and over again? Are you consistent? That's the only thing that matters. Stick with it, and you will see results. It's not that a calorie deficit didn't work for you. It's just that you didn't stick with it long enough. It's not that strength training didn't work for you. It's that you didn't stick with it long enough. And that goes for anything, mindset, like habits, anything. And having patience, having grace with yourself, and distracting yourself. Like,
Yeah.
don't be so obsessed.
Agreed.
Touch grass.
Touch grass.
Yeah. Okay, I want to play our game. We have been doing a little Kiss, Marry, Kill.
I love that this is the PG version of this game. I know on this podcast, I think I've been pretty good. The podcast that we host, there are so many F-bombs. So
Oh my God.
you're getting a very polished version of me here.
No, honestly, I've been practicing, and this podcast has helped me a lot. I swear too much. Okay, so number 1, early morning training, midday training, and evening training.
Kiss, early morning training. Marry, midday training. Kill, nighttime training.
Totally
if it
agree.
is past 5 o'clock, I'm on my couch.
No, like what? How are people going at like 2 or 3 a.m. after a full day?
Yeah, I've been asleep for 5 hours at that point.
No, that's crazy. And even at night, like, I don't understand how people don't get wound up. Like, if you're not wound up after your training, you are not training hard
Agreed.
enough. I'm sorry. There's no way that you're able to fall asleep after that. I'm sorry. It's not possible. Unless you're like going to exhaustion, in which case it's like, okay, leg day, arm day, back day.
Marry, leg day.
Me too.
Kiss, back day. Kill, arm day.
Me too. Okay. Big 3 barbell lifts: squat, bench, deadlift.
Marry the squat, kiss the bench, kill the deadlift. I hate deadlifting.
Really?
I'm terrible
Okay.
at it.
Okay. I was talking about this earlier, and originally I was going to marry deadlift, but I actually think marry squat.
Yeah, squat's the king for sure.
But I feel like front squat.
No, I don't like getting choked out when I train. I leave that for at home.
Marry squat. Kiss deadlift and kill bench. Okay, I already know what your answer is going to be for this one. Bulgarian split squats, leg press, and walking lunges.
Ooh.
I feel like
Probably going to...
I chose them all similar for a
Okay,
reason.
I'm going to marry a leg press. I'm
Okay.
marrying a leg press. That is my like tried and true.
Yeah.
Kissing split squats.
Yes.
I do love split squats, but I like kind of phase them in and out depending on like how masochistic I am.
Yes.
Probably kill lunges. I'm okay with lunges, but they're just the odd man out.
No, I'm the same way. I think so too. And yeah, like whatever. I say marry split squats, kiss leg press, and kill walking lunges. Okay, this is a fun one. BCAAs, L-glutamine, and creatine.
Marry creatine.
Yep. Agreed.
I probably kill BCA. I'm doing this all out of order. Yeah, so marry creatine. So I'll kiss L-glutamine and kill BCAAs. I think BCAAs
Totally
are
agree.
so widely overhyped.
Yeah, and
If you eat enough protein, they don't matter. It's like,
Yeah.
what's that meme of the person who's like in a pool pouring water on their
and
head?
pouring water
That's
on
BCAAs.
themselves. That's so good. No, I totally agree. Like creatine, cognitive benefits, training benefits, everything. It's amazing. Even if you've had a poor night's sleep, like creatine helps a ton.
Yeah, I think the cognitive benefits of creatine are fascinating.
Insane. Yeah. L-glutamine, definitely kiss, just because, if you have tummy troubles.
The prettiest girls
so
do.
great for your digestion. It's true. If you have digestive issues, it's a lifesaver. Try it. Okay, pre-workout fuel. This one's funny. Fruit and cheese, pre-workout scoop, and electrolytes and water.
I'm going to marry electrolytes and water, kiss pre-workout scoop. Who the heck is eating cheese pre-workout? Like,
I would.
the last thing I want is to feel like I'm going to PG myself. But yeah, I don't want to poop mid-leg press because I just ate a bunch of cheese.
Oh my God. Okay. I think I would actually marry fruit and cheese.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I love fruit.
I respect your opinion, but it is wrong.
Thank you. Electrolytes I would kiss, and then pre-workout scoop I would kill because I hate the itchy feeling
Fair.
of pre-workout. I can't handle it. Okay. Cardio, Stairmaster, treadmill, sprinting, or walking outdoors.
Marry walking outdoors. Kiss stairs. I'm not sprinting.
Full of hamstring.
I sprinted last year and I tore my hamstring. And I was like,
Did you actually? There
this
you go.
isn't for me.
That's so funny. Yeah, obviously depending on the goals, but I would probably marry walking outdoors.
Gotta touch some grass.
Treadmills. Yes, gotta touch the grass. Kiss treadmill sprinting just because it's efficient. The only thing that's harder about that is obviously it's my hamstrings get sore when I sprint. So
I believe it.
you have to factor that in when you're training. So it can be a little bit harder to fit in if you're in the gym a lot, but if you're not, then great. And Stairmaster, I would kill. Gallon of water a day, 8 glasses of water a day rule, and then drinking when you're thirsty. I think we're going to disagree on this one.
I'm gonna marry a gallon a day. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I drink more than that.
Holy moly.
Kiss 8 cups and I will kill drink when you're thirsty, mainly because I think for the average person, I don't think they're in tune enough with their body
That's
to
true.
be able to make that like determination well enough.
That's true. That's a good point. Okay. Well, for myself, I'm going to marry drinking when you're thirsty. Kiss 8 glasses a day and kill a gallon of water a day. I do not want to be peeing that much.
You get used to it as a bodybuilder.
Okay, gym bro who screams. Influencer, filming in the rack, but you have to assume that they're disruptive.
Okay.
And half rep ego lifters.
Am I allowed to kill all three?
No.
I'm probably going to marry the guy who's filming.
Me too.
I'll kiss the gym bro that's screaming. Gotta kiss your homies.
Yes.
I'm killing the half repper.
Killing the half repper. I think I agree. I'm going to say me too. Okay, training styles. Push-pull legs, bro split, full body.
I feel like I gotta marry push-pull legs because that's what I've been doing for literally years.
Okay.
Probably... I feel like there's context that's needed here, but I'm going to probably kiss full body, kill bro split.
There's definitely context. Yeah. For myself, I'm going to go marry full body, kiss push pull legs, and then kill bro split. Do you want to elaborate on context briefly?
Yeah, so I would say I would prefer full body for people who are either not training exclusively for bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. If they're beginner, even up to like intermediate.
Yep.
Because I think that there's an advantage to training certain muscle groups and movement patterns multiple times a week.
Yes.
And their like threshold that they need to reach from both like an intensity and a volume standpoint just isn't that high.
Yeah.
And again, like, you know, if you were say training for another sport, if I wanted to manage recovery as well, like I'm not pushing, you know, the weight training side to the max. So being able to hit everything kind of multiple times a week, I think there's a lot of advantage to it. I generally just don't love bro splits because I think what ends up happening, you end up in a position where you might have a certain muscle groups recovered after like 72 hours, and then you're waiting another 3 days before you train it again.
Exactly.
To me, it's just like not economical.
Yeah. Also, for anyone who doesn't know, a bro split is like body part split. So you're doing arms one day, you're doing legs, not even just legs. Like some people do just quads or something like that. Yeah. So it's like very small parts of the body broken up compared to training all together in a compound lift, for example. Okay. If it fits your macros, which is a type of eating where anything goes, anything is allowed as long as it fits your protein, carbs, and fat metrics. Intuitive eating and meal prepping / calorie counting.
Marry meal prepping.
Yeah.
Kiss macros, kill intuitive eating.
Oh, okay. I think marry meal prepping and calorie counting, kiss intuitive eating, and kill if it fits your macros. But I'm more like new agey hippie than you are.
Here's my thought is if we're talking about most people who become clients, especially if they're like a weight loss client, intuitive eating to them got them overweight.
It's true.
So, and that's not to shame them, but like their way of instinctually eating has gotten them to this place where now they require some kind of intervention. So I think if you are somebody, it seems like yourself, who has the skills to be able to do that, I think intuitive eating is like a great skill to have for just like an easy way of living.
Yes.
I think for most people it doesn't work very well because you need certain skills to be able to do that.
Yeah. Which is why I'm kissing it, because it's like, okay, like I feel like I've done the calorie counting for quite some time, but I feel like I may be going back into that era, but we'll see. Okay, we're going to move on to fun stuff. Lord of the Rings films.
Okay.
All three.
Ooh, in what order?
Like kiss, marry, kill. Like which one are you going for?
I'm going to marry Return of the King.
Me too.
I'm going to kiss Fellowship of the Ring and kill Two Towers.
I knew that was going to be your answer.
That's tough though, because I always consider them just one long movie.
It's true. Okay. I am going to marry Return of the King, kiss Two Towers, and kill Fellowship. Okay, rom-coms. He's just not that into you. Crazy Stupid Love and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
I'm marrying Crazy Stupid Love.
Me too.
Love
So good.
love Ryan Gosling.
Yes.
Sorry, what were the other two?
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, and He's Just Not That Into
Probably
You.
gonna kiss. He's just not that into you, and I'm gonna kill How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
I agree. I'm the same. Okay. The Dark Knight trilogy.
Oh boy. Well, I'm gonna marry The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Kiss Batman Begins. Kill Dark Knight Rises.
I think I agree.
I also like all three, but
Yeah.
Dark Knight Rises I do think is the worst of the three.
I do agree. It's sort of like, what is even going on? And it's really dark. And I'm like, I'm confused. Anyway, it was such a pleasure having you on.
Yeah,
I feel
thank
like
you.
this has been one of my favorite episodes that I've done so far. It's been so fascinating. And I think people are going to love it. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this is helpful for you. And let me know if you guys have any questions. Actually, I would love to know if there's things that you would want us to explore a little bit more, if you feel like you got a good baseline knowledge of how to start with dieting. And if you need more, then maybe we'll have Ryan back on. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
for coming
thank
on.
you.
Yeah, it was great.